Hello, I'm Bruce DePuyt. Coming up today on News Talk, it has taken years, much longer than anyone would have thought, but finally, the D.C. region's housing market has fully recovered from the 2008 economic collapse. What does this mean for those of us looking to buy or sell a home? And will this recovery last? We'll ask John Heithaus, Chief Evangelist for Real Estate Business Intelligence. Also for you this time, the crisis may have passed, but that doesn't mean that Greece is out of the woods. A sluggish economy and a mountain of debt posing significant challenges for that country. And most experts believe there could be more trouble ahead. We'll talk with University of Maryland economist Peter Marisi.
From WJLA, this is News Talk with Bruce DePuyt.
So good to have you with us today. Hello, welcome. We've got a great lineup. Glad you've made us part of your day. The real estate market in the Washington area is finally back to where it was pre-crash, before that massive economic downturn that struck the nation 7 years ago this summer. Why did the recovery take so long? And what does this news mean for buyers, sellers, and renters? We're delighted to have back with us today John Heithaus. John is Chief Evangelist for Real Estate Business Intelligence, a subsidiary of MRIS. Good to see you again. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
This is like a celebration moment, and it has certainly been a long time coming. When you all crunch the numbers and say, we're fully recovered from the economic downturn of 2008, what do you mean?
Well, in the real estate markets, it's not difficult to separate the metrics that drive the market, and there's really three of them that matter the most. Number one is the inventory for sale, the supply on the shelves, if you will. The second is the closed sales, because obviously those are important because those are matters of public record. And the third, which is the leading indicator, are the pending sales. And in all three of those metrics, we've seen a full return to a robust, balanced real estate economy here in the D.C. region.
So are we where we were in July of 2008?
Well, July was the beginning of the downturn. The bottom really officially occurred, statistically speaking, in 2010. So the slide, if you look at the graph, right, the slide took a couple years to really kind of bottom out. And
it snowballed over a long period.
It did.
In August of 2008, we had bank failures.
Correct.
And that triggered just a whole mess, obviously, as people recall all too well within the economic system. But that wasn't the worst of it. That was in some ways the shock, because the headlines were Lehman Brothers and all these other companies having trouble like we hadn't seen since the Depression.
Sure.
But as you correctly point out, it took a long time for bottom to be found.
It did. So kind of a precipitating cause. You know, I wish I had paid more attention at economics in college classes, because today I'm getting a real first-hand lesson in not only supply and demand, but cause and effect. So there was the cause, but it took about 2 years for the effect. And sadly, thousands of families, hardworking families that had put up down payment money and scrapped and saved to buy houses, during that 2-year process, there was a lot of pain inflicted on people losing their homes. Their credit ratings were damaged, some cases irrevocably, and it really had a very strong impact on people here in the market.
People unable to pay their mortgages because of economic situations that hit the family, and folks in a real quandary in terms of what to do with money that they did have when they faced a home that was underwater, where maybe they owed $400 on a house that if it were to go on the market would probably only fetch, say, $250. So you can stay good with your lender, your borrower. You're the borrower, they're the lender. You can stay solid with your mortgage company, but are you using your money wisely?
Sure.
if you're paying down a mortgage on a house that's underwater?
Sure. Well, it's no fun to chase a downtrending market. It's very difficult. One of the blessings of real estate is that it's probably one of the best investments that any American family can make. The downside is that it's not particularly liquid. And in a situation where everybody's kind of running for the exit, so to speak, those people that would, and I hate that term underwater, because it really kind of it disparaged people. It wasn't their fault. They didn't jump, they didn't pull themselves in that situation. The economy did that. But even if they wanted to sell, they couldn't. And lenders became very stringent and tight-fisted with regard to their short sale rules. And one of the reasons it took us so long to recover, and it's about 5 years end to end, and what we see today is that lenders weren't playing ball fairly. You know, there wasn't an accommodative lending environment, and if you were an honest payer on your mortgage every month, but you wanted out because you had a $100,000, discrepancy in the market value in the mortgage, lenders weren't on that. It took them a couple years to for the gears to mesh in together to get the support systems in place to start to clear the market out.
What brought us back?
Well, continued low interest rates are clearly, if you're in the fan seats, for the Federal Reserve, you have to, give them their props for a very accommodative lending environment. We still have historically very, very low mortgage rates. When I bought my first house in 1981, mortgage rates were 17%. And today, fixed rate money is still right around 4%. And lenders have become far more receptive, and because the market's the investment potential of a market from a lender's perspective has increased because we've seen real price appreciation. So lenders have gotten a lot more with the game, so to speak. Second of all, our employment picture here is very strong. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, for instance, the Washington area still enjoys very high median economies, and even with some cutbacks in the government and all the restrictions that Congress put, there's still a very, very robust economy here. So when people feel good about their paychecks, they feel good about buying a house, and then when they read and learn that there's appreciation going on, you combine that with tax benefits, and you have one of the best deals in all of America.
Is the ideal world one where housing values grow, but it's steady, it's not a hothouse environment, if you will. It's not swings, but steady, right? I mean, that's the kind of sweet spot that we hope for, right?
See, you paid attention in economics probably closer than I did, Bruce. But yes, real estate markets like stability. They like 2 to 4%, nice steady growth. Spikes create bubbles, and bubbles are, with an illiquid asset, is just not a very welcome thing. So yes, markets like that. Buyers like that too, because they can say, well, if I buy this house for $300, in 5 years it may well be worth $315 or $325, and they see appreciation with tax benefits. And as you well know, with the way the capital gains for real estate works, two taxpayers on a combined basis can get $500,000 in profits tax-free. That's the way that the federal laws work. It's a real beautiful thing. So that's the ideal sweet spot for the situation. Just what you described. Spikes, not good. Steady growth, perfect.
I saw a tweet this morning, and in my rush I didn't have time to click on it. The takeaway was, and it was a little flip in the way it was worded. The message was, there are no homes available in D.C. right now. And obviously some neighborhoods are hot.
Right.
Some neighborhoods, the for sale sign goes up, the Sunday open house sign appears, and the next thing you know, it says under contract. That's not all neighborhoods, but it's a lot.
Right.
I mean, the close-in suburbs, the city, popular, hot, in demand.
Right.
What is the inventory? So getting beyond just the superficial nature of a headline like that, you see the numbers.
Sure.
What is the inventory?
Well, interestingly, inventory numbers are at a 6-year high. But at the same time, the demand side is double what it's been historically. And that's why we see that in pending sales. Those are the most important indicator, because those are sales that have contracted but not yet closed. We also at MRIS, we track showing appointments. There is a company called Central Lock that makes lock boxes that has a smart card on it, and they track all the visits that property's had. So we're able to see the demand at the front end of the curve, and that's really what's red hot. So the supply is strong, but the demand is even stronger. And because real estate isn't like a box of cornflakes where you can instantly put another 1,000 of them on the shelf, especially here in the district where 60% of the inventory are both condos in buildings, multifamily, as well as townhouses. So if you want to build new supply, you've got to go through all the zoning and land acquisition. It takes forever to do that. So supply is strong, but demand is even stronger. Northern Virginia is the same way. Very strong.
Does that mean that if you think of the seller-buyer balance, it's sort of like a seesaw in the play, from the playground? Are sellers a bit more in the driver's seat right now than buyers?
This is a classic seller market situation when supply outstrips demand, and we're seeing that in the price appreciation. At the bottom of the market in 2010, the median sales price in the D.C. and Northern Virginia area was in the mid-350s. We're now at approaching 460. So we've seen huge price appreciation in 5 years. I mean, $100,000 is a lot of real money that happens, and we're going to continue to see that pressure on available listings, competition. We will likely see more bidding wars. But with bidding wars, the lender still has to say yes. You and I have talked about this before. We could agree on a buy and selling price, but if I'm underwriting with a lender, they still have to say, well, that market value is okay. So
and they're much things. And the appraisal process is, I get the sense that they've tried to make it a little more kosher in not having the real estate agent pick the appraiser, a little bit more independent now. So,
well, under Dodd-Frank,
a more accurate snapshot.
Yes. Well, accurate's a tricky word in real estate because it's relative, but you're close. Dodd-Frank and some of the other consumer protectionisms created something called a qualified residential mortgage, and with that came much stricter appraisal rules. And the input from the real estate agent was one of the things that was deemed to be unsavory, that it may have been, kind of tipping on the scales too much. I'm a 35-year real estate guy, and I'll tell you, a real estate agent is the best person to know. So cutting them out of the process doesn't make it better in my view, but from a lender's perspective, it made it cleaner. And that's why and those rules are still in place, and there are cases where a number of houses don't appraise out.
We've been talking about residential real estate. I want to talk in our remaining moments about commercial real estate, about office in particular. We're seeing major vacancy. We're seeing a spike in office vacancies, a rise in see-through buildings right now, at least on, if not 100%, obviously, 20, 30, 40% of buildings being vacant because of federal cutbacks. And there's another interesting dynamic at play. As Dan Zak writes in the Washington Post this week, the suburban office park was sort of the go-to for developers for a long time. I guess you can trace it in part back to people wanting to get away from cities where there were various concerns, right? Now, it feels like people are wanting to get away from that remote, sterile, car-centric suburban office park. It's like you've got to be near a metro, and preferably you're in a more dense environment, right? And that's it going on, and that probably is impacting real estate in some way.
It is. Well, think of the
residential.
Oh, absolutely. They're tied at the hip. Remember the old Yogi Berra quote? It's deja vu all over again. In the 60s, when office parks weren't really invented, and gas prices became an issue, and commuting was kind of a dirty word, it made sense to work very close to where you lived. So you saw the office development, and then you see the residential development to accommodate that office development. What we're witnessing now is not quite 180 degrees, to your point, but a 30 or 40 degree switch away from that. And I live in Rockville, and I see the commercial signs just about everywhere. And then there's some new buildings coming in place that are fully rented, but a lot of it's on spec. And it's going to be a very interesting commercial real estate story that we're going to see, because there's a huge supply and not as much demand, and what's old is new again, and so the district is hot. It's cool.
A lot going on in the world of real estate, residential and commercial. Always great to be able to talk with John Heithaus, Chief Evangelist for Real Estate Business Intelligence, a subsidiary of MRIS. Thanks so much for coming in today. Great conversation. Always good to see you and talk about these issues. We'll take a quick break here. We're back with much more News Talk right after this.